discussion as part of our meeting. First of all, I'd like to call us to order, but acknowledge the Board of Education acknowledges that we are on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nation, and we'd like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. I'd like to adopt the agenda.
That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley, approved the January 14th, 2025 Open Committee of the Whole agenda as presented.
Awesome.
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? No? All in favor? Awesome. And we have a presentation on flexible learning environments and paperless classroom. Brian McCaskill. The PowerPoint.
Are we allowed to get?
You're on.
Are we going?
You can
Yes.
sit in there, you guys wanna?
Yes, you're
Yeah,
on.
I think we'll go
Yeah.
in there because I need to see this.
Yeah.
The plan.
I feel like I'm right in the road, so I'm just gonna go to the side.
You're asking for a lot there. It will, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting us to do a presentation on an innovative project that we're quite excited about. I think everybody knows me here, Brian McCaskill, Principal Mark Isfeld. This is Miss Kim Murchison, who is our senior math teacher extraordinaire, PC 12, pre-calculus 12, and calculus 12 at Isfeld, along with accounting 11 and 12 and economics 12. So we're going to run you through a project that we started planned last year, started this year. Because we're just from a school administrative perspective, where this kind of came out of, where it was seeded. Probably number one, myself. I spent 4 years at Vanier as vice principal after 14 years teaching there, 5 years at Highland as vice principal, and then moved to Isfeld. My time at Highland, we brought in a lot of blended learning stuff, so integrating technology and supporting student learning in a variety of ways. It's kind of my passion. A big part of my philosophy is the positive integration of technology, not just using technology to support student learning. And on the flip side of that, probably alongside of that, is using technology in a way to support inclusion and be assistive with student learning. Flexible learning environments. Kim can tell you that I have been telling staff in this day and age, especially with our grade 12 students, we need to think about, do our students need to be in school, in the brick and mortar school every day, every block, and still get their education? With the use of technology, I think we can be much more flexible, and that they have access to their curriculum any place, any time, most importantly, at their pace of their learning. Looking at that as being more flexible in collaboration between student to student and teacher to teacher. Big piece you'll notice in this, and Kim's going to talk about it quite a bit, is the classes we chose to do this pilot. Preparation for post-secondary is a big aspect of that as well. Where this came from, at Isfeld, our CLC 12, our Career Life Connections 12, and our Capstone are embedded in the timetable. It's part of their schedule. This one aspect of this that is pretty exciting is this came from a student. So last school year, semester 2, a student by the name of Marin Chapman, amazing student, who on her own used her own iPad and a stylus in Ms. Murchison's class. There's a couple of examples up top of what she did in her class. She used GoodNotes app that you'll see, and used it throughout the class, used it in English class, some sciences class, and that was her capstone. And she presented it to Ms. Watt, who's our careers teacher, and Ms. Martins, who's one of the vice principals. I caught wind of it in the school from staff, so I went and found her and said, show me. And I was blown away, and this is actually where this started. So it actually started from students, which is pretty cool. Our motivation guidance, as always, our strategic plan when we talk about flexible learning environments, personalized learning, inclusion, core competencies from the ministry, First People's Principles of Learning. You'll see a lot of reflection and connectedness, students working together and building relationships in this as we go through. So the plan, I'll say huge kudos to Josh and Jay, who provided district support, tech support, financial support in conjunction with some financial support from ISFEL to get this off the ground. So it was a digitally enhanced, so using technology to promote learning and working towards a paperless classroom. I've been harping on staff about how much paper we go through in a year. How many, what did I say, 100 trees last year, I think it was, is that right? Something
My
like that?
class alone.
Your class alone, yeah.
I ride my bike as an offset.
And then so starting where we're at right now with digitally enhanced learning, working towards a more flexible learning. And now we chose pre-calculus 12 and Kim's calculus 12 classes. Number one, because that's the classes Marin started in and it worked really well. Number two, Kim was willing and excited to try it. Number three, a large number of these students were transitioning to post-secondary, right, as grade 12s this year. So they were, one thing I will say is it is a targeted group. It is quite an academic group. That's not reflective of the whole school, but it's a place we wanted to start with that post-secondary tie-in to see how that affected things. Because a lot of students come back to see Kim once they've gone on to university, college, or whatever post-secondary path, and a lot of them were saying learning management system, so an LMS like Brightspace or Canvas, etc. And they just had their tablet with them 24/7. It wasn't like when we were in post-secondary, right? So that's why we started with them. Each student got an iPad, a case with a stylus and charger. We signed them up for a note-taking app, GoodNotes, that Kim will take you through, Microsoft Teams that Kim uses quite extensively, and a blend of face-to-face in the brick and mortar school and digital instruction. And that's our quick timeline. I'm not gonna read through it all. So planning and where we're at right now, we'll say that Kim and I have also, through Jay's connections, met with Apple education representatives because they're interested in what we're doing. We had a pretty good conversation about AI in that conversation with Apple and how they can support us moving forward. We're looking at that semester too, so we've had the initial conversation. One of them, they were both educators, which was interesting. It wasn't a huge Apple business perspective, it was actually an education perspective when we had our meeting with them. One of them's based in Vancouver, so we're gonna hopefully connect with him here in the second semester to see what else we can do. And then semester 2 starts in a month. We're moving from pre-calculus 12 to calculus 12. Yes, I'm done. Over to Kim.
And you're gonna try and play just a little bit? Yeah.
You could probably show the whole thing. Carrie said we had an hour and 15 minutes.
I'm used to that, so don't even.
For the lecture, set yourself up for success. Step 1, import your lecture slides in advance to GoodNotes. This will save you time and keep you focused on the content. You can import by selecting New within the document library or within your notebook. You can import from your Files app and connect to Google Drive, iCloud Drive, OneDrive, or Box, or even by dragging and dropping a file into your library. We recommend using one notebook per course and importing your lecture slides directly into the same notebook each time. Step 2, familiarize yourself with the material. Before the lecture, go through your notes and mark down any questions, ideas, or thoughts that come to mind. This active engagement will help you better understand and remember the content. During the lecture, capture every detail. Step 3, record your lecture using the audio recording feature in GoodNotes. This way, you can focus on active listening and rely on the recording rather than scribbling everything down. You can revisit the lecture and retrieve any missed information or clarify any doubts you may have. Take notes alongside the lecture slides. Mark up or highlight the slides as needed. Any notes will be synced to the audio. Tip: if there isn't enough space on the page, add a comment to add the info without cluttering up the page. After the lecture, cement your learnings. Step 4, summarize your lecture to absorb the new information. After After marking up your lecture notes, create a summary page to highlight the key concepts. Use links, diagrams, and supplementary information to enhance your understanding. Step 5, stay organized. Label the lecture in the outline for your notebook. That way, even if you add new lecture notes every week, you'll be able to easily navigate to Lecture 1 or Lecture 3 from the document outline. This will save you time when you need to review or study for exams. And there you have it. By following these 5 steps, importing, going through notes, recording, summarizing, and organizing, you'll be well on your way to taking lecture notes like a straight-A student with good notes. Happy note-taking.
I've been in the district now, I think this is my 20, I've been here since 2001, so long time. I've been at ISFELD almost the entire time. I worked in Indigenous Ed for a year, and I've worked in Pemberton and Parksville, so I've been in a few other districts, but mostly here, and mostly math. I have to say, I know this was about being paperless and getting things online, but it quickly turned into beyond what I could have expected. And being in your 20-something year of teaching, it's pretty exciting to have something like this happen. And it's more exciting to see how it affected the kids than anything, which is the best part. So Reese was a student I had in grade 11. This was last year. This was this year. This is with good notes. This took way less time than what that took. This is something she can use at the end of the year, something she'll take to post-secondary, and I think they all look like that. I had about 30 of the students last year in Math 11, so I have a lot of comparisons I can make, and they hand their stuff in digitally, so I have it all where they'll send stuff in on my ed, so I have copies from years past that I can show other kids. And obviously, there's no test on this at the end, but it is a math, upper level math course. So anyway, that's just one quick what I see when the kids hand stuff in and the difference for them. And then I'm gonna have to, I guess that's on me. Oh, I already went ahead too far. There we go. So I've just got lots of quotes. These are, the students did a fairly large survey. These are just the kids' own words, and can everyone read those, or do you want me to read them out?
So Kim did a large survey of both, because we run 2 sections right now, PC12, with iPads, and Kim did a large survey, so these are quotes just verbatim from what the students had to say.
Yeah. And I didn't bribe them. I actually wasn't even there when they did the survey. And that's the ironic piece to all this is I was actually off for several weeks during this surgery, and we were able to just keep rolling with it the way things were, so that was an added thing that we didn't really expect. But anyway, I think knowing that all their math study sheets and notes are stored for next year, I'm still in contact with a lot of the students from last year, and that was probably number one. Some of them did the survey for me as well, just to see how things work post-secondary, and that was one of the big ones that they had, because they still had their stuff. This, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to highlight some of and to give you, we're going to see a few of these slides. So preparation for post-secondary. The light purple, and I didn't make these colors, this is from forms, I guess, but basically you can see anything on the right that's actually really positive. I framed the whole survey, so anything that rides towards the purple on the right is a positive thing, and anything on the other side with the oranges is not as positive. There's also a big chunk in the middle which is neutral. So if you take off all these questions, just to look at this, if we look at some of the high ones, helped me organize. Biggest difference I noticed with lots of kids, and I'll talk about that later with inclusion. The other piece here, summarize complex ideas. So if I think about the core competencies and curricular competencies, that's what we want them to be able to do when they leave us. Online submissions through MyEd, the benefit to that is parents have access to all of their work. So when you're looking to see what's my kid doing in your class, have they handed stuff in, you can go take a look, and my feedback's right in there for you to see as well. So it connects the parent, the kid, and the student, which I find with my own kid is really helpful. And then another one, they've got all their stuff in one digital place to take with them to post-secondary. And again, if you think about the size of an iPad, they have it all there, right? They even have their textbook that they can look at because it's on my blog. And I don't have Brightspace because I've had a blog for almost 20 years through another district initiative many years ago, which was Women in Technology. So it allowed me to just keep going with some of the stuff I've done. So sustainability was another one. Brian's really worried about paper, and I go through a lot of paper. And this year I have not gone through a lot of paper. I still have gone through some, but not nearly as much. The digital storage is just, it's amazing how much they can put in one place. And I think the other piece to it is watching a kid who struggles and is disorganized have lots of paper. I put things in booklets, I try to make it, but you just have to look on the desk there, I'll talk about that in a minute, how much stuff the kids have to keep track of, and this just allows them to kind of put it all together. So, yeah. And then sustainability, so you can see on here, environmentally friendly. This is the big one, digital school supplies, graph paper. They don't need graph paper anymore, colored pens, Post-it notes, digital binder, tabs, folders, digital textbook. The textbook is online on my webpage, which I'm allowed to do because we purchased the textbook. Tracy Richards isn't here. Okay. Shapes, tables, rulers, calculators, geometry sets if they need it. All of that is in this. So I can replace this, and this is their other classes they're using it for. Paper, notes, booklets, there you go, Brian, we're saving all that paper. Highlighters I asked them for, graph paper, geometry sets, some of them want agendas, calculators, glasses, if you forget your glasses, you zoom in and you write, and you can read everything. And that's here for them. So if you're a disorganized kid, that's it. And the cost, I went on Amazon because, you know, I like numbers. Buying all these things was, including the notes package, notes fee was $142 just for supplies. And I think for families that have 2 or 3 kids, that iPad's gonna last the kids for several years. And they guard them with their life. They don't leave, like they'll leave their textbook that's $100 and something bucks, and they'll leave their graphing calculator, but they don't leave that iPad laying around because it is valuable. So, so sustainability, the plastic from all the extra materials and all that stuff just adds up. This is the big one for me, and I think the most important kind of, I would say, good disruption in my teaching from this is just, this one's I've had for a couple of years, and having an iPad and bring all this stuff to school, I love the fact that she talks about, I can do my homework in my bed because my back hurts after sitting in desks, and they do a lot of homework in math and science. They know where they're headed. They have students come back and talk to them in my classes, so they're prepared. They want to know what they're going to do, and they want to be successful. But when we look at the inclusion, this was the big piece for us, for me anyway. I know the paper and all that. So here's another one, Jaden, his learning style. So if you think about new curriculum and competencies, that's a big piece, is what their learning style is. This is probably the biggest game changer, and if you want to do notes online for yourself, GoodNotes is amazing. I'm making my husband do one for cookbooks, organization, getting ready to go skiing in the morning, checklist. It's amazing tools that they have. But the kids can shrink things, so if they have trouble writing, they can make my notes bigger. They can write, super messy, and they shrink it, and it looks amazing. I had a kid last year that I could not read a thing. He couldn't read his own stuff. Like, he literally would take notes and write stuff down and do his study sheets at the end of the chapter. And this is where he was actually able to use his stuff. And I've talked to him since this year at university, and he's like, it's amazing that he has this to use with them. And it's right there, all his stuff that he did. So, yeah, and I kind of liked, they're using it in all their other classes. The teachers didn't have to change. In fact, I didn't have to change a thing in my classroom to use this and bring in this technology. I had a web page that I started years ago and added stuff to. It's getting huge. But other teachers, the kids just take their iPads in and they started taking pictures of stuff and writing on them. And other teachers embraced it. Their textbooks, if they want to write stuff on a page, they take a screenshot of the textbook page and they start writing on it. And they have instant feeding all those, what their brain needs, right? And it's, every kid's is very different, how they do their notes and how they put things together in their heads. So here's inclusion, so just a few, helps me come to class more prepared. I think that's the supplies. Like when you look at how much you have to come with each day, it's insane how much stuff, and I remember my bag at university and it was always like heavy and packed and you forgot something at home. And then handing their work in on teams as soon as they're finished. I don't know, as a teacher, how many kids finish work and you find it a week later. It's like the parents are like, but they finished it, I saw it. And it's like, they can hand it in whenever they want. On MyEd, it's set up and they can send it away as soon as they're done. And for most kids, it just means it gets handed in on time and they're not searching for it later. And they don't lose it because they've got it digitally saved somewhere. Other things, and this is one that when we talk about moving forward, I've been in contact with Jane Hondo quite a bit, and the talk to text features, translating tools, spell check, they don't use that as much, and I think it's a place that we really want to move into in the future is all these other tools that it has. We're kind of just like got shoved in and we're making it work in a class that's pretty up here. We don't have a ton of time to play around with stuff, so the kids do a lot of the playing and teach me, which is fantastic. The other piece here, this is still under inclusion, they can review and read their own digital notes. They make sense when they're trying to go over it, put things together at the end of the unit. You saw Reese's study sheets. My kids all do those at the end to put their own thinking together. The joy of these has been they've been able to do it as we go through the chapters instead of waiting till the end because they didn't want to wreck it. They wanted to know how much space they needed. What they've been able to do is they add little notes to their notes and then they go lasso it and they pull it into their study sheet whenever they need it. They move it around at the end of the chapter. It's how they make connections with things. So their study sheets at the end become very personal and what's important to them, and it just allows them to build it as they go. So the benefit to me is they're reviewing what we just did that day. They've gone and put it down, they've made some connections with it, and then at the end of the chapter they put it together even more, and they really have a much firmer understanding. The other thing, the zoom in feature, like I mentioned, that's super important. The lasso tool, the clutter and weight of the backpack is huge. This area here, looking at how they can use other things, like what are some real life applications, and that's part on me, that I want to pull in more stuff digitally that we can, add to things, have a bit more action in their notes and stuff like that. So, but that's coming. So this is what a typical MyEd, this is what a parent might click on. This is not the most exciting one, sorry, but you can see how they have these little envelopes. As a teacher, I can see immediately who's handed their work in. So I go around and I'm like, hey, I haven't got your stuff yet. I'm not looking through my folders, and I can have that interaction and find out, like, is something going on? Is it like dance week? Is it basketball tournaments? And that'll lead us into the next thing about doing it anywhere. But this gives me some good feedback right away that I know where everybody's at. And if I see a bunch missing, that means I really need to go contact that kid. So that's another piece to it. This is huge. In fact, I started my blog 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, because of how much school kids miss. And in my classes, it is kids that are really high achievers, higher anxiety than probably some other classes because they push themselves really hard. They're very academic. They take really tough course loads. So they don't like missing school. Like, they hate it as much as I hate them missing it. So anyway, I had a student go to Africa last year for a month. And he came back and he was right where we were. And he was one of the ones that started with the iPad pilot last year. Well, before we started the pilot, but there was about 12 of them last year that were already doing it. So student parent access to all course materials through teacher blog and student work in MyEd. So parents really have access if they want to. And in grade 12, I do have some parents that want to know where their kids are at. So others are like, they're leaving soon. They're going to have to figure this out themselves. So this is, I think Matt summed it up pretty well. Access to taking your notes wherever you go, and catching up when you're traveling. So they take their iPad, which is much better than taking a textbook on the plane. It's expensive now to take heavy things. And, so, yeah. ChatGPT gets mentioned. I've been dealing with Wolfram Alpha and Photomath, and I put my answer keys a long time ago online because I want them to be able to figure it out at home. And ChatGPT is just one more thing. That's another tool. My assessments in class, they're doing it in front of me, so I'm not really worried about ChatGPT in that sense. And we have a district committee meeting next week or something about AI, and so I'll happily see what everyone else thinks about that. But I've been kind of looking at this stuff for a while. And I am not a tech person, by the way. So all this tech stuff is really simple. Like, I don't love technology, I'll be honest, sorry. I love to see technology that you see immediate, like it's better. It's not just technology for the sake of technology, but it's actually making things better. And it's not just playing on it. The kids lost their phones this year because, obviously, and I gave them iPads, so it was, take away your phone, but you can have an iPad. It's been great. Like, it's actually, it was a great trade-off because I didn't really have to worry about phones as much. They get behind too much if they play on their phones, if they talk faster. So accessibility and flexible learning, Teams, they were able to go on the blog in Teams every day. They just pick up the notes and stuff each day. Field trip sports, at home when they're absent, if they're sick. They would not stay home when they're sick. Grade 12s do not stay home. They're like, I'm going to school because I don't want to get behind. More of them will stay home when they should stay home because they know they can catch up at home. So that's kind of nice, not having a bunch of sneezing and coughing all over my room. The big one, notes are accessible anywhere with an internet connection. So, and you don't have to worry about remembering paper. You just have to have your iPad because you can get everything digitally. Another one basically makes it easier to connect with my classmates and connect with my teachers. So those connections to me are how they can help each other out and not sit there stuck. And if you've had kids in math that struggle, you probably know what I'm talking about. So it's nice to have that connection piece and the whiteboard that they can go on and look at and help each other do stuff. I am not doing free tutoring at night if I have to teach any of your kids, by the way. I don't do that on the side, but they help each other, which is great. This was kind of, I just asked the kids, curious, what is the most important thing for you? For them, it was that flexible learning environment because they are busy. They're in lots of stuff. They have jobs, right? So they can take it to their work and they do homework at their jobs on their lunch hours. They're pretty committed kids. Prep for post-secondary was a close second, sustainability, and then inclusion. And ironically, for me, it's that way. Like, I'm the opposite. I'm like, the inclusion and differentiability for me is the more kids that can be successful and keep track of their stuff and do what they want to do, like get into that career that they really, really want. I don't want to see math be that and hold them back. So that's my quote, I think, more than paper and doing it other places, it's the making sense and how engaged they've been. Like, they're so excited to show me and show other kids in the class how to do stuff, which is, I think, a really rewarding thing to see. That's why you wanted to teach anything. Some challenges, a few, not much, but this is where we're getting into the transfer of data and returning the iPads, because we have some kids not taking calculus. So they have been given the sad news that the iPad stays with the calculus course. And we did have a few kids that didn't get iPads that are sitting there going, it's my turn. And they're just so excited to be getting it in a week or so.
I can add. So one thing I didn't say is we had 30 iPads, right, that we were able to purchase, iPads and stylus. In Kim's 2 sections of pre-calculus 12, there's 60 students. Both sections are full. So a lot of conversation in the round is how do we do this? How do we make it as equitable as possible, as fair as possible? We were lucky because 14 had their own device, or their parents said, okay, yeah,
early grad gift.
Yeah, early grad gift, I'm gonna buy you one, so that put us up to 44. The other piece is, they didn't have to do it this way. If they wanted to do it, we'll call it traditional, pencil, paper, that, and that's how they learned best, they could do that, and some did. We put everybody's name who requested a school iPad, basically old school, and drew 30 names randomly, and then made a wait list. We ended up with 5 or 6 who did not get
In the
their,
very end,
Yeah.
I think we're down to 8.
yeah, down to 8 who
They
did
don't
not
have
get
it.
an iPad. And I will
They
say,
all want it.
yeah, I will say that was my biggest struggle with this, is those 6 or 8 and budgets. That was the biggest struggle, but we had to start somewhere. So one of the challenges moving forward is that equity piece in the sense of fairness. It'd be great that everybody could have one, right? That wanted one. And the budget piece that comes with that. So that's one of the challenges moving forward for sure.
So wiping the iPads, we have had a couple that got turned back in because we had students that realized they didn't need Math 12 anymore because they chose something different. They find that out when they start their courses in grade 12. It happens with a lot of that. So they brought theirs back in and sadly passed it over and we wiped it, and it's gone out to one of the few that didn't get one. Going paperless, this is probably the biggest challenge because with post-secondary students going into math, and I was just in a meeting on AI and math with Changing the Culture, which is the Pacific Institute of Mathematical Sciences, and math still does assessment using exams, and they're high-stakes exams, and I've got kids one step here and one step there, and if you ask them, the number one thing, they want to be prepared. That is what they want when they're going off to spend a lot of money at post-secondary. So I have a foot in high school and a foot in university with them. And I have students come back to talk to my classes every year. They all come. It started during COVID. I had a Zoom call with 8 former students at all different levels that came and talked to my classes about what it's like at post-secondary for them. And some that didn't go to post-secondary right away and traveled and then went, so they get in on the Zoom calls as well. So the paperless thing, exam-wise, I thought there'd be a difference from writing their exams after doing it all on the tablet. The only problem we have is when you erase on the tablet on GoodNotes, you scribble over top of your writing. So that's the only thing I've really noticed is when they're doing their tests, there's like scribbling over top of their mistakes, and then they go, oh my God, this isn't my iPad, I have to erase it. So it's like scribbles everywhere, but then it's like, so that's really the only thing. It really is pretty similar, but it's kind of funny watching them as they erase and it's not erasing. So yeah. Advice, this was the students' advice to all of us. The first complaint they had was, other teachers need to get their stuff online, blah, blah, blah. And I said, why don't you just screenshot it? And it was like, the next day was like, oh my God, I can do everything. And they took off with it. So they have all their classes in their iPad. Ms. McKillican, who teaches science, the English teachers, we've had a bit more trouble with getting it on with English because they don't have keypads. I do, because I asked for one and they're really expensive, but they don't have keypads. They just write. You can write on them and move stuff around, and they have to keypad right on the screen, which isn't as fast, I guess, as a keyboard for them. Moving forward, so sharing what we learned. I've already done the mini, what did I have, 2 minutes, Brian?
5.
To teach them, no, I did not. It was not 5 minutes. It was not 5 minutes. To teach them all about the iPads and all about MyEd and how to do all that in 5 minutes. And how many times? 6,
9.
7, 9 times the staff moved
We
around.
did a rotation at a staff meeting
Yeah,
of
so
various topics.
that was my first, I'm not doing it that way again, but it was way too much. And then everyone came and asked me a million questions after how it worked because it was interesting and they saw kids using it in their classes. Learn how to use the technology with other things, so that's where I want to add more stuff and beef up what we're already doing in class, and use the kids for this. Like, what could I add to this? What did you find? What can I throw in there for other students for sharing? And that's where Apple Education, they've said, call us anytime, and if we can help you with it, and when there's time. So it's finding the time to do that. Transition to the new semester. This was my thing, was the purchasing the iPads. The kids want them. The ones that have them, they don't want to transfer stuff off and go buy a new one. They want to purchase them, and that's an issue we can talk about later. But
Josh's issue.
I feel like grade 11, they should start paying a monthly fee and just get it at the end of grade 12 or something, you know, plan ahead, $50 a month. and
Rent
then-
to own.
Yeah, so it's good planning for them, and a lot of them did get them as grad gifts, or they had to pay for some of them. A lot of them have jobs. And then equity, I mean, it ripped my heart out to watch some of the kids sit there and watch other kids have and other kids not have. And as a teacher, I'm all about being fair, and it was very hard to do that. So they are excited though to get it coming now. So and then thank you. This is Claire's statement. This was Sarah doing a little Desmos picture, which this has about 80 equations in it for math to make that one picture. So, and they do a lot of transformations in Math 12, and they all had amazing pictures. I wish I could have put all of them up, but hers was kind of like a little flower, thank you. And yeah, they were pretty excited, so it was a nice taking away the phones and giving them another piece of technology, which is much harder to hide under your desk, on your lap, and in your pocket, and everywhere else that you want to hide it. So, and it's flat on your desk, so it's easy for me to see this up to what. So, anyway, so that's it.
Wow.
And I'll say too, probably the most important part is having a teacher like Kim, A, that's willing to do this, B, that's willing to learn from students. And I find anytime you bring the technology, integrate technology in a positive way in the classroom, the teacher has to let some of that power control go to the students, as you can see what they can do. But I think the most important piece is the foundation of this is still the teacher. It's still a human being in front of students. And I saw a really good TED Talk, I think you sent it to me.
Yes.
From Khan Academy, saying no matter what AI does, no matter what's coming with education, we still need the human being in front of our little human beings. And that's, I would say, the biggest reason this has been so successful so far, as we're halfway through the year now. And a huge thanks to Kim.
Speaking of, my master's was in basically learning math and metacognitive things, and I've done a lot of coding on like mental health stuff, ironically, and I'm a math teacher. And I think the biggest part for all of that is the relationship with the kids. And being a math 12 teacher, there's not a lot of kids that walk into your class and you can say, what do you know about this? And they know where you're going, because you're obviously like, you're going through stuff pretty quickly. And it was pretty nice to have that turned around and them helping me and giving them that sense of like what things that they found. And it was pretty cool to watch that and be on the other end of things and learning together a bit more instead of a little bit one way. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim and Brian. My mind's like, and I can only imagine the absolute amazement that students, they must feel so prepared, far less anxiety, and in terms of going to post-secondary, the tools that they learn on this and how they would utilize them in order to navigate their way through their courses and to connect to learning more deeply. So, and it's individualized, right? Using the tools in a way that makes sense for you as a learner. That's so exciting. Thank you so much, both of you.
Any questions? Great,
No.
thanks. Oh.
Go
I have a
ahead.
question. What's the logistics of if something happens, like it falls into a bathtub by accident? Is that the work on it saved
Insurance.
somewhere? The cloud?
They did
It's on the
sign a user agreement contract. We figured with the group we had, very mature group of students, the damage would be fairly minimal, loss, etc. And Josh and I had talked and said, we'll see how it goes, but we weren't gonna.
I know, I meant the actual information, like if
Oh.
if
Oh, it's
some-
on the, it's on.
so it's on the
It's on
cloud,
the
so it is, so if something happens to this, it's not, okay.
They,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, when they go away, like the
Mhm.
students that I had last year that have come back, like for them, it's like, I walked in and didn't have to learn something I got to jump into learning what I was there for. And everybody's using it. Like, I met the summer before we did this, Maren did hers, and then I met with a few students over the summer that I'd had in the past, and they showed me what they were doing with it. And that was where I'd already said yes, so I was in it. But yeah, it was pretty neat to see, and they said it's like, even when their iPad dies, they can go and it charges really quickly. We have charging stuff in the classroom. The pencils are super expensive. They've kept them in their little boxes the whole time, and even my most, we still get disorganized kids that are a bit of a mess all over the place, and it's just so much less stuff for them. Like, that's the biggest thing I think I noticed over the last 2 years was they can handle that because they love technology. And when you love something, you're gonna look after it. They don't love their math textbook. Like, they would like to burn it probably, but they can't, they don't wanna pay for it. But yeah, I think it's huge for them. Like, look at them with their phones. It's like life attached.
I think the other piece too, and Kim has mentioned this with the technology and the ability just to erase and try again without making a mess, like Kim mentioned, they will actually, compared to being on paper, go on and try more challenging questions and challenge themselves, because if they make a mistake, they can just erase it, it's not messy or anything like that. And talking to Miss McKillican, Deb McKillican, who teaches anatomy and physiology, what we would call biology 12, has a lot of the similar students, and chemistry. She has said to me, they are learning more using this, and they're going deeper with their learning because they can make a mess and then either erase it or fix it, or make a mess and the program will clean it up for them.
Yeah.
And she said to me in the hallway once, she's like, these are great, they're learning more because of this. So.
And some kids don't like, I hate to say this, helping other kids. Like, kids that are really strong in math don't love sometimes being slowed down by other people, and they want to show other kids how they've done stuff and figured it out. And then some of my kids that maybe aren't the strongest, their creative ability to connect and make things, like, put it together has helped them raise the bar. And then they're looking at, you know, there's a different level of, like, you're really artistic and connected, you've got like some really good basic math skills, and everyone's come to the table with their strengths, and you get a better kind of community in the classroom. And it's, I mean, I can't say enough, thank you both for getting it, and I never would have expected it to be that. I mean, I saw it last year happening, but it's been pretty amazing. Like, after 25 years of teaching math, it's pretty cool to see it.
So Christy and then Jared.
I was wondering if there was, oh, sorry, you were first, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna ask what kind of metrics can we expect to maybe see from the pilot project, and where are we going, what's the next steps?
Metrics, like you mean student achievement?
Possibly
Sure.
achievements, mental health, like, are there some metrics from the
We've
pilot?
had 2 kids drop the course this year, and normally we have a few more, like we have
That's
about
true.
6.
Yeah.
So we've had less drop, partially because I think they were afraid to lose their iPad. I'm not joking.
After first semester, wherever they end up in post-secondary, to see how did it help lessen their anxiety and their stress, because they had this tool with them, they had their notes with them, etc. That would probably be one of the best metrics we could look at.
Yeah, like next year, connect with the same kids and see if it made a difference for us.
Yeah, it's so cool to see, I'm going in a million places with like the opportunities for students. I'm in post-secondary education later in life right now myself, and I'm using, not this app, but a couple things that are sort of similar. And I'm like way more confident at school using some of these tools than I would have been, and I'm doing really well, and I can't imagine like some of our students with like ADHD and some of the things, how like the way that it organizes everything and can make it make sense like that, like intuitively, and how much that could support students. what they're learning and general mental health, so
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting to see and imagine what the possibilities could be in the district moving forward, so thanks so much for the presentation, it was great, and now I'm gonna look up that app, so check it out.
I actually, I started using GoodNotes in all of Jeremy's amazing, exciting meetings that we attend,
Yeah,
and it's,
well, just
and
the dictation
I-
alone,
yeah,
jeez,
I've never been a kind of a technology guy, I got my notebook,
yeah,
and I will say GoodNotes is
it's so amazing.
great.
Yeah.
It-
There's notability too, it's the international
Yeah,
students come
notability
with
is what I
notability.
have, yeah.
And they all came with, like, our international students, that's the other piece that I get a lot of international students in math and science and business.
Yeah.
And it's been a huge benefit for them to be able to have, you know, a little bit less writing, or the next step bigger,
Sure.
just, it has allowed their transition to be a bit smoother when they're leaving home and
Yeah.
coming to a new country, the different language and stuff, so. But yeah, no, the follow-up's the big one, I think.
If I could just make a couple quick comments. First of all, I appreciate what I heard from Brian was he wanted more meetings. That's all I heard from Brian there, but,
Zoom meetings.
Kim, I just wanted to address, look at, that's why it should only be an Apple Pencil. Right? That's a proof of concept right there.
I just, they
Um,
demonstrated.
Kim, I wanted to just address a couple things that I really appreciated, and I want to move away from the conversation about the tool. But what I heard behind the tool, and I'm a former high school math and science teacher and a former high school principal. Math has not always been a pleasant experience for every student. In fact, one of the narratives that we often fight as math educators is the value of math at home, because parents will disassociate, I don't do math either, I don't get it, I'm not a, like, there's this whole piece. And I think, I've mentioned it before when we were talking about design principles for the strategic plan, that we are failing in schools if we actually need additional mental health supports because of the experience in schools. And I think when I hear themes behind the rationale for the tool, like differentiation, inclusion, student agency, empowering some of their gifts, having interest base, the idea that somebody could be potentially at a sporting event or a drama festival and still keep up and reduce their anxiety over something that is still looked at as a key sort of entrance ticket into post-secondary. I think that, I just really appreciate that piece, because we do need to do, and kids need to experience mathematics differently. And I would say that the pressure that is experienced for students in pre-calculus is different, but not dissimilar to the experience that students have in earlier grades as well. And that experience around mathematics, we can't discount how critical it is that when kids have a positive experience in mathematics, it increases their connection to school. They feel like that's where sometimes we have students who are infinitely brilliant, but don't do great in a math class and get a message that they're lesser or not brilliant. And so I just appreciate what's behind the tool, and I think that there are other tools as well in addition that maybe are even easier for scalability, but just really appreciate you even articulating and connecting to mental health and other pieces around student experience. And I love like how many times you honored the fact that kids have complex, busy lives, they're whole people already, and we need to start finding ways to let go of some of the ways that we've traditionally orchestrated their experience to honor their like whole being and having those flexibilities. So I just appreciated all those pieces behind the tool and your thinking for why this was an important pilot. So thank you.
And keeping it where they need it to be successful in the future, but also respecting those other pieces. But yeah, the anxiety and attitudes towards math I could talk about forever. After doing my master's on all that and journals and hearing the trauma and the stories that kids have had, it makes me really sad. So I want them to leave on a more positive.
Thank you.
Thank you both for taking
Thank
time
you.
out of your evening.
Thank
I have to
you.
go. I have to go home and read some Harry Potter before bedtime.
I'm gonna go home and do some graphs and math with my grade 6.
Thank you so much.
Get Kim or Bill.
No, it's okay, I got a bag. I wanna really demonstrate how awkward this is.
I remember my back break, yeah.
There's actually like serious ergonomic.
Yeah.
University, like that was the biggest question, is what kind of technologies would be the most useful?
Yeah, I know, mine was. I am aware of our time, but I just really felt that was so exciting and that I wanted to really lean in and then learn more.
Very cool.
Cool. Up next, we have another presentation on accessibility through inclusive education. Tara Ryan, District Vice Principal of Inclusive Education, and Sean Lammerman, our Associate Superintendent, are here with us. And take it away, Tara.
Okay.
We're good. I missed something, didn't I?
No,
Nope.
just
Nope.
delivery of water bottles.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, you're okay.
Good.
You didn't miss anything.
Not at all. She just introduced us.
Yeah,
Dive in.
you've been introduced.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I've spoken at the board meeting previously about the accessibility committee, so I'll just dive right in. I know we're on a bit of a time limit here. So just to review where we've come from and then give you a little bit of an idea of where we're headed with the accessibility committee. So we originally started our committee back in 2023, spring of 2023. For a couple of reasons. One is that we wanted to do this in a response to the need of our students, our diverse learners, and making sure that they had equitable accessibility to education and to our buildings. And the other was alongside the initiation of the accessibility legislation that the BC government brought through in June of 2021. So we started by putting a call out for applications in the school district and in the community, and we had a huge amount of response. And so we spent a good amount of time going through those. We were really encouraging applicants who had lived experience of a disability or parents with a child with lived experience of a disability, as well as staff members who worked with children with disabilities. And we narrowed that down to have 7 people on our committee. There's actually a slide coming up that will show you the different areas that each of our members qualify under. The committee needed to have at least 50% of its members who had lived experience of a disability or worked with people with a disability. It needed to be reflective, the whole committee, of the diversity of disabilities in British Columbia, and have at least one member who was of Indigenous ancestry. So I'd like to just jump in really quickly. I showed this slide a bit earlier, or sorry, this little video a little bit earlier. I'm not sure how to do this on here.
You can do it.
Hit this button. So this is just a short little video that I found that I really appreciated around why we do what we do, and then I'd like to jump into some statistics as well. Maybe? Josh, where do I point it?
There you go.
Josh will do it. Beautiful. Thank you. So just a snapshot, and I love that video. It's really about, for me, thinking outside the box and how we can address the differing abilities of all students and allow them to be successful in our buildings and in our classrooms. Just to share a couple of statistics around accessibility. Over 78,000 students in BC, which equates to about 14%, have a disability. There's 645,000 Canadians with a disability who could be able to work and aren't currently working if we had better accessibility in our communities and workplaces. 70% of adults without a disability are employed, while only 50% of adults with a disability are employed in Canada. And 70% of disabilities are invisible. So mental health diagnoses, autism, ADHD, addictions, brain injuries, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and so on. And most importantly, because parents adore their children, and for anyone who has a child with a differing ability, they are fierce advocates for accessibility, better accessibility in our communities and our schools, and that's why we need to do what we're doing. Sorry. Josh, help me. Okay. So I'd like to just go over our goals for this year, and then I'll talk just briefly about what we've been able to accomplish since spring of 2023 when we started. One of our goals on our website currently, if you go in, it has our original questionnaire for accessibility, and we had really good feedback on that as to what parents would like to see in their schools, in their community schools, where they felt like there were barriers, and so we have culminated all of that information. We'd like to shift that now this year to actually have a reporting tool on our website, just a button where parents can click on it and report if there's an issue at their child's school. For example, currently I'm getting emails, a few emails every now and again when a parent comes across an accessibility issue. For example, a dumpster at one school was in a handicap parking spot. Actually, that happened at 2 schools. At another school, there's a handicap button that's tucked, or sorry, a door accessibility button that's tucked in quite far behind a totem pole that was erected. So there's some things that need to shift, and our operations department is on those things and addressing them. So we'd like that to be easy access for the public, is to report concerns that they have in the schools that are blocking accessibility for our students and our families. A second goal that we have is to update our accessibility plan on the website. This was, what's the date on that?
September 2023.
Thank you, can't see that far. And so we definitely need to update it and reflect some of the work that we've been doing in this school district and post that to the website so it can be accessed by the public. And that's our second goal for this year. Next week, we're super excited to have Melissa Kenzierski, I believe it's pronounced, coming over from Vancouver. She's an artist, and Spark BC is funding her to come and spend some time with us to do some graphic representations of the work that we've been doing. This is an example of the work that she did with our social planning committee in the Comox Valley, which is the accessibility committee for the Comox Valley. So there's one for the Comox Valley and one for the school district. And so on Tuesday, we have a total of about 22, I believe, students and their helpers coming to spend some time with us to talk about what accessibility means to them, so students with disabilities or diverse abilities, and represent their experiences in the school district around accessibility. And so we're super excited about that. And then Wednesday, she's returning to do a second session with our committee and some of our audit members. And I'll talk about the audit in just a moment that we completed last spring. So these two are examples. This is the same artist that worked with Spark BC around the accessibility projects with the social planning committee throughout the valley. Our fourth goal is to take all of the information we gathered last year through our website questionnaire and our audits, as well as the information that we will garner next week in our conversations with the artist, or the artist, and culminate them into a grid similar to this so we can break down what we think is feasible to start with. Low cost areas that have a low impact, low cost with a high impact, and so on. Some of the things that we found that we could start with that would be super easy would be, for example, in some of our meetings in assemblies, simply turning on, now the word is gone, Closed captioning, thank you. I knew it was there. And that's something we're trying to get schools to start doing in both meetings and assemblies, and some teachers even in classrooms, not only when a child has a hearing disability in the classroom, but we've found that students who struggle sometimes with reading actually start focusing on the words, and they can improve their reading skills by turning on closed captioning. So some things that are low cost and can be a high impact. In addition to that, things like making sure that curbs are spray painted the colors that they're supposed to be. Gaps in the pavement are indicated for students who are low vision. Last year we were working with one school to ensure that the snow was cleared for a child who had a vision difference and was struggling with depth perception, and it was really important that we made sure that the snow was covered so that child could access their classroom the same way as their peers were. So really paying attention to some of those things and making sure that the low cost items are addressed and part of our routine, looking into that and making sure we follow up. I mentioned the audit that we did. Spark BC helped us to create an audit, and principals and vice principals were asked if they wanted their schools to be put forward for this audit. And the accessibility audit is really about us going through the building and following some standards for accessibility and finding out if different parts of the school meet the expectations. For example, if there's an outside door to a classroom and a drop-off that kids have to come down, that would not meet accessibility standards. A child with a physical handicap might not be able to exit the school that way. We were measuring heights of sinks and heights of tables. Could wheelchairs get under tables? We had on each of our audit teams parents, an administrator, at least one staff member, and students with differing abilities as well. And that was super helpful in us thinking bigger than what our team would have been if it had just been our accessibility committee. This is just a couple of pictures of some of our students who helped us. Spark BC was great in supporting our school district in this. We were the only school district last year that they were supporting to do this, and they agreed to pay all of our students, whether they had disabilities or not, a living wage of $25 an hour for their time. So they attended the training with us, and they participated in some of them in all 7 of our audits. And it was great for them. Their parents dropping them off and sending them off to work with us was, I think, a really good feeling all around. And the kids really came out of their shells too. In the beginning they were pretty quiet, and by the end they were telling us everything that was wrong and what measurements weren't right, and they were helping us take pictures of everything, and they could have led the next audits on their own, I'm sure. So that was a really neat experience for them as well, and we were very grateful to Spark BC for supporting our school district with that. Our 5th goal is to prepare for and celebrate National Accessibility Week in May. Just an opportunity to bring awareness and to celebrate Canadians with disabilities and promote inclusion and belonging in our schools. Our 6th goal is to develop a process to add to our committee. We started with 7 members of our committee. We now have 8. We just recently added Karma Taiji, a district principal, who is also part-time principal of Glacier View. And of those 8 members, each of those areas are represented. Some people hold more than one role. And again, just at the bottom of that slide, I repeated what the ministry criteria included. So we're looking at one of our students. We always wanted to have one student on our committee, and the thing about students is they grow up and graduate. So now that student is a North Island College student. You saw him in the picture I had of some of the students that helped us out. And so we're looking to get another student, and we're not sure if we're going to have a nomination process or how we'll do that. So that's something that the committee's working on this year, because we would like to get a wider breadth of folks with their experience. So the piece about us learning, Sean tells a story of a couple of years ago, one of those students in that picture, the boy who was in the middle picture, had Sean in a spare wheelchair that he had for a day navigating when Sean was the principal. I guess that was more than 2 years ago, when Sean was the principal of Marcus Felt, and he had him navigate through with a mock disability and practice or see what it was like to actually have to navigate a school for a day in a wheelchair. The Comox Valley Social Planning Committee on their website actually offers that to community members. If anybody wants to give it a try, you can contact them and they'll actually take you through some of the community and have you trying to navigate different paths and that kind of thing in a wheelchair. One of the things I did want to mention, though, is our learning piece. When I wrote this slide, I thought, okay, I can chair this committee and we'll move through and improve accessibility in the community, but in our communities, school communities. But it's been such an eye-opener for me having different students and different parents with differing abilities being on our team. And I'd just like to tell you one story about, we had a student at a school who had a disability where part of the right side of his body was paralyzed, and it was a lifelong disability. And when we were going through the school, we were doing the typical things, measuring the height of the toilets and the height of the sinks and the doors, are they wide enough, and does the handicap button, accessible button work, and that sort of thing. And we got to the bottom of this flight of stairs, and he looked at me, and he was just a very, very bright kid, and said, well, this doesn't work. And I'm looking at the treads, and I'm looking at, the height difference is taped off, and the handles look great going up. And I thought, well, why doesn't this work? And he said, well, because the flow of traffic in a school is always on the right-hand side. So when you're going up the stairs, you have to be on the right-hand side. And then when you're coming down the other side, you have to be on the right-hand side. And that's where the handle is, but the right side of my body doesn't work. So I either go up and I'm not always steady on my feet and I can't hold on, or I have to go against traffic. I never would have thought of that looking at that staircase. I never would have considered how that could have been problematic. So you can see in the top right corner, the nothing about us without us is a phrase that that we've really enjoyed using throughout the work that we've been doing, particularly with the audits, and really valuing the input of our students and parents with differing abilities. Sean was mentioning earlier with our new classrooms, our new Aspen build, and the classrooms going in at Cumberland, there are some things that they're pre-designing to put into the buildings, like new sound fields, which is great. We did have a student last year in one of our schools who was in a portable and who was deaf/hard of hearing, and it was a very difficult place for that student to be because there were so many echoey sounds, and it was hard to use their hearing aids and have it work appropriately, and it was a really hard place for the student to be. So of course then we have to go back and retrofit extra insulation and all of that kind of thing to make it work for the student. So Aspen and Cumberland are going to have sound fields pre-built into the classrooms, and there seems to be a lot more consideration with the builders around accessibility needs in our classrooms and our schools. Maybe you'd like to add? Sounds good.
Is there any questions? Thank you so much, Tara and Sean. And all right.
You can go first.
Well, I feel like we should go after the trustees,
Okay, yeah, fair.
just for time.
Yeah, that's fair.
We were okay with it. Yeah, like Shannon,
Go
you're,
ahead.
yeah.
Don't feel like you have to answer me for longer than 30 seconds. How about that?
Are you timing me, Megan?
No, I want to be the last person to time you.
Okay.
So just about the student engagement committee, we found that, would there be a long-term goal in having more than one student? Because we found sometimes nerves for kids in adult environments, even when they're feeling supported by really genuine, kind adults can mean that they don't necessarily, it takes longer and it's less efficient for them. They need more students around them to strengthen their voice.
Yeah.
So just hopeful that there would be more spaces coming for students so that they can move in a pack.
I totally agree with you, and the students' names who have come forward by some of our district specialists, like our deaf and hard of hearing teacher, our teacher of the blind, and that sort of thing, they're putting kids' names forward. And we found that exact thing with our audit as well, that we didn't want just one student on our audit team for each school when they were in a pack. In fact, the two boys in those pictures that you saw at the first school that we did, they were pretty quiet and just kind of followed us around and didn't say too much. And by our 7th school, they were like headed for the gym when we were done and racing and showing us all the tips and tricks that their wheelchairs could do. And they were vocal about their involvement and the accessibility needs of each school. So I think that's a great idea and something that we'll definitely take into consideration. We'd like to get a little bit of a younger voice too, not just in grade 12, so then we lose that person, so there can be a little bit of longevity with their time on the committee. Thank you.
Follow-up question, okay?
Yeah?
Thank you. Feedback from the volunteer parents on your audit team about your work, Tara, and your investment have been great. Can you talk about accessibility versus inclusivity and how those two things may differ and how they work together, please?
Yes, and I'll stretch it even a little bit further if that's okay. I had a meeting yesterday via Teams with the artist who's coming in next week, and we were trying to create some of the questions to draw information out of, especially the students when we meet with them. And we kept getting stuck on that word inclusivity, pardon me. Even though I work for the inclusive ed department, it's a tough one because I see inclusion as all of the things that we're doing to improve accessibility in our schools are to create inclusion and to have inclusion, but the ultimate goal is belonging. And so we can create better ramps and better sound fields, and we can create better PowerPoints that are easier to hear and easier to see and all of those things. But without that paradigm shift from you're in my classroom, therefore I'm inclusive, to you are a member of this community and you belong, then we're just doing it to check the boxes. So I believe we're trying to improve accessibility so that kids physically can have better inclusion in our school communities, with the ultimate goal being true belonging in our schools.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tara.
And I really like that word that you used before, Tara, because we heard Tara earlier, was like shifting the culture. And so that really speaks to me in terms of the definition of inclusion and connecting and belonging. It's a paradigm shift.
Thanks, Susan.
2 questions. First question, just the logistics of when you've audited schools, or even if the schools haven't been audited, but if something comes to the attention of an administrator at a school about accessibility issues, can you talk about the actual, how does that, like, what's that process look like from like an operations standpoint, and how is that working, and where have been what's worked really well, what hasn't, like, just.
Yeah, great question. So have me back in a few months and we'll talk about that, because we are still, so we've spent a good portion of last year with our questionnaire and our audit of 7 schools. And we now have all of that information in the hands of Spark BC, who are waiting for this artistic graphic representation to happen next week. And then they're putting all of that in a report together. So what we will do with that at that point is meet with operations. Obviously, I'll meet with Sean and we'll talk about, okay, now we've prioritized it into that grid of cost versus effectiveness, importance. And then we can talk about where to go with that. We've definitely jumped on some of the things, as I mentioned, that are super easy to address, and we phone operations and it's fixed the next day. If it's moving a dumpster, we've got a work order in to move that accessibility button like I was talking about. For some of the bigger projects, that's definitely something that we need to talk about with principals and operations and find out. The accessibility legislation that came down from the government doesn't have funding attached to it, so it's something within the school district that we will always be looking at and balancing out with the other things that we're doing.
Because work orders, like there's this just work order bit, right? And it's, you know, there's a difference between a leaky sink that's kind of dripping versus this actually student needs this.
Yeah.
And is there a way to differentiate that, to prioritize it?
It's a really good question, Jen, and one of the things I'll add is communication versus not. And our maintenance department is fantastic. If they have the info, it's usually done immediately. Sometimes the gap that's missed is in getting the info right away because some of our administrators have to prioritize that to go right away as opposed to just follow the work order path. And like you said, there are a ton of work orders, but I know when maintenance has that information, they act on it immediately, and literally I'm talking within a day or two. So it's something that's incumbent upon me to just remind our administrators when we have, you know, a priority situation. The work order process is there, but make a phone call and let's get that communication as quickly as we can.
Sorry, I had like two questions. You were talking about, so the schools that were audited were Highland, Isfeld, Vanier, Airport, Queenie, Chardon, and Lake Trail. Is there an opportunity to now, like Royston, Cumberland, like the other schools that haven't been audited, is now there a plan to audit them?
Great question. So we've definitely talked about it, and then we prioritized those 6 schools that I outlined for you tonight. But this committee's not going away, so our work will definitely continue. What we didn't want to do was spend a second year gathering more data and still not doing anything with it. So we opened it up to all PVP to volunteer their schools for this process. They didn't know what they were signing up for, and it was new to all of us. And so we did those 7 schools, and now we want to collate that data and do something with it. I like the idea of doing other schools because it's one of the principals mentioned that she just wasn't seeing things that were obvious in her school. For example, we were walking down the hallway and there was a big cabinet in the hallway, and we talked about, okay, why is this problematic? And somebody with a vision difficulty might walk right into it, or water fountains sticking out of the wall, and all of those things. But when you're in your own school, it's hard to see those. So I do believe it would be great eventually to have all the schools audited. To be honest, that was our original goal, and then we quickly learned that there was no way we would be able to do that in one school year. So once we get this information put together and make some decisions about it, then I can see us opening that back up to our schools.
The other thing we do is when we have challenges with a student who's designated, we don't necessarily recognize them. And so we have an accessibility contract with someone who comes down, and so if we have a new student who is legally blind, as an example, he will come in with the student, he will walk through with maintenance, with Molly, and then they'll go through the whole school and with his expertise identify where tape needs to go, where we need to adjust, and then that's done immediately. And that's contracted through Victoria. And he comes down when we have students that have specific needs within schools that sometimes parents might not even recognize because they actually haven't been in the school before. And each school, although the same, is different.
Sorry, one more follow-up. The audit, the results of those audits, they're going to the staff, the administrators and staff?
They will be once we get the reports back.
Will like PACs/parents have an opportunity to view that audit as well?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
I don't think I have any more questions, but I might.
That's good, Jen.
Thank you.
I was, creative. Okay, do I have a list of trustees, so.
I think my oh, sorry, I thought you said I was first. Sorry, I thought you pointed at me.
Shannon, Christy, SJ.
Okay.
Hit
Sorry,
it.
I'm ready to go first, but thank you, that was one of my questions, like what next in relation to schools going forward. So that's that's interesting to know. A few just quick questions, I think. I was curious about Spark's involvement with the audits on those 7 schools. Was it Spark leading it, or was it Spark like participating in and just like every other member of the audit team, or?
Yeah. So Spark BC and a couple of members from the Comox Valley Social Planning Committee met with another committee member and myself probably 2 or 3 times before we committed to doing the audits. And then their involvement was, they had already trained the social planning committee, so then the social planning committee worked with us, and we have one school district member, by the way, who sits on both committees. So she had helped with the audit on the social planning committee as well. So with her assistance and the social planning committee and Spark BC, we trained those people who were interested in being part of the audit. And then they just let us fly with it, and then we were able to report back to them the things that we noticed. So that was really helpful, and they were on standby. We had so many video chats with them about how do we do this and what's the best way to organize it and structure it. So they really provided the guidance for the first one, and then we just took off from there. The other thing, did I mention already, that was that they paid our students to be involved. So that was another great reason to have them on board. We could now follow up and do audits on future schools without their involvement. We wouldn't have that funding piece to pay students to help us, but we feel pretty confident about going ahead and auditing other schools on our own now.
Well, it's a great community partnership. And then just one last question. I'm curious about, I remember your presentation in the fall of 2023, I want to say, and I didn't see that the accessibility plan on the website. Did it make it up there?
I don't believe it's on the website.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's still,
good.
no, it's important, and we need to do that and represent to our community the work that we've been doing as well. So it's something that came to my attention this winter, is that it's still somewhat skeletal, and so I really want to represent the work that we've been doing in there so it's accessible to the public.
Okay. I would love to hear when it is up and have a peek again.
Great.
But thank you. Yeah, no, this was a great presentation.
Okay, thank you. Christy?
Thank you. I think my question was answered, because I was going to ask if there was still the availability for the resources with Spark BC to assist maybe next year to continue on this work, but it sounds like it was a one-time shot.
Spark essentially initiated the training for us to be able to do it ourselves, and it was the connection with the community and having a member be part of both. And that's how we became one of the first districts to actually do this in BC. And it's how then they used us to contact other districts and say, we have a great resource here. Let's collaborate, let's connect. So we're actually fortunate, based on the work that Terry and the community's done, to be able to start facilitating our own audits.
Okay, and we'll be completing our own reporting too, because I was wondering about the capacity for that, of course, too, because I imagine collaborating and bringing all that data together to report out on that is going to be
And it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility to ask them to remain involved from that, right? And we've kept those connections strong with them. So we will definitely be talking to them after this artist work is completed, because they're funding that as well. And I would love to work with them again. They have just been fabulous. They actually, 3 of them flew over to be part of our training with us and to just guide us through it, again, courtesy of their organization. So they've really been a pleasure to work with.
fantastic. It's great work.
Awesome. Esther?
Yeah, I think it's a great presentation, and lots of information that other people have already asked and have been answered, but I'm excited. I think the most exciting thing for me is just having that reporting tool, like that your goal. I don't know if that's like your number one goal, if it was just the first of all of the great goals that you guys have set. I appreciated hearing about them all, but I think having a reporting mechanism like that that's barrier-free for students, but also like in an accessible way, like if I was walking on any property in our district and I notice something, I can pull my phone out and immediately, make a report. And I think having that availability to if you see something, kind of say something. As far as accessibility needs go, I think is gonna be really impactful, especially for some of the other schools that weren't a part of the audit process. For everybody to have their voices heard in multiple different ways and have it be quick reporting, and how cool for you, you know, obviously that's all gonna come to you, Sean, and be able to communicate that out to operations, right?
Well.
Or is it around? Sorry. I'm not gonna get in the middle of that. I can go to whoever it goes to, but.
No, I agree with you.
It'll be a
Thank you
really
for saying
cool
that.
thing to have, and I know in the past I've had emails about some issues, and to have that tool to be able to guide families towards that, and I'm sure the PAC would appreciate that too, so.
And there's also a
Yeah,
recognition
thank you.
of the good work of our maintenance department in that when we see things in one school, we
Yeah.
don't need to be able to see it in 10 other schools.
Of course.
Like there's transference that occurs all the way around, and that's where we work very fluidly together as a system.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Okay, I think
Thanks.
Carrie has a question.
This might be like a really lofty question, so part of me was hesitant to ask, but like, I'm just curious how far you've been able to go down, exploring the barriers based on mental health.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I just want to go and have a committee meeting right now. And for those of you that know my training is in mental health. My master's degree is in mental health. I'm a registered clinical counselor, and so even just, you know, I was perking up during the math presentation about mental health in our students, K to 12. And no, we haven't gone down that path. We've done the obvious and objective stuff first, but I think that's definitely a place to go in the future, and I think it's a great question. So yes,
I think I
I'm
just wanted
totally
to ask the
interested.
question knowing that it was a lofty question. And so needed, right?
But it's a realistic question too, and so I'm really appreciative of you asking it. I'm already trying to think of recruiting kids to come and help out with that, and what are the things that cause stress and anxiety and depression in schools, and the social piece of it, and then that gets back to the belonging piece that I was talking about, right? So it is so connected with it. And now I want to put together an audit for that, so thank you, Carrie. Yeah.
I had that question as well. That's where my brain went, and especially trauma, right? So there's a lot of thought. I've been thinking a lot about that. Thank you. Well, you may, because I am that person who will
Thank you. I just
lean in.
Sorry, when you said website, I went on to the accessibility defined because I was
Yes.
like, what does that look like? There is an accessibility to st71.bc.ca. Who receives those emails?
I do.
Okay, you do. So if somebody, there is still questions for people to accessibility feedback, is that still, can you still submit and that goes to you?
I sort of have a quick
Yeah,
follow-up
yeah.
too.
Thank you.
I'm
Very
curious, when you
cool.
shift from an email manner of getting input to a reporting tool that looks like you're implementing, does that end up becoming anonymous or with an anonymous option, or how does that make it easier?
Great.
Or different?
First of all, we'll keep that email alive so that there's still the opportunity for communication in other ways. And we've discussed this at our last committee of how not only do we want a reporting tool, but we want to practice what we preach and be accessible and have other ways that people can report, whether it's through email or a phone call or an interview or that sort of thing. So that was one of the things that we discussed. I just lost your question, Shannon. I'm so
Partly
sorry.
whether, I mean, I don't really actually know if people would feel uncomfortable making
confidentiality. Right.
Registering a concern about something.
Right.
And whether
Yeah.
anonymity would be an important aspect for some parents, I don't know, but just curious if
Thank
that's
you.
an element of the reporting tool.
What we had decided on as a committee would be that would be an option to either report anonymously or to add their name if they wanted to follow up.
It's important to have different pathways because we also have some families that want to provide information, but maybe not too sure how to go about doing it, so we can learn about something that's in a school that we can then go, oh my goodness, boom, 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 we need to get on this, or make phone calls. So it's a combination of both, so.
Okay, thank you so much. We are already, over time, but I'm thinking, the board, I know that we only have a few things left. I really like to carry on. Are you okay for 10 more minutes? Is that okay? I would, I'd say 10, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah, I just, so my feeling on it is that some really meaningful conversation is happening, and I think that the more we learn and dive in together, the better. And so I didn't stop us because I just really feel it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, thank you, Sean.
We're trying to slide out quietly.
Yeah, do it.
I also learned from everyone's questions, and that was a
very good.
question I had, so it was like, okay. So, next we are, a little bit of board governance. The BC School Trustees Association, the BCSTA AGM motions for consideration are coming due, soon. We need, as a board, to have any motions that we would like to put forward, put in front of us and have discussions about what we would like to support, what the board would like to support and put forward for the AGM in April. And I know that Shannon is our representative for BCSTA, and she had recorded some topics that were of interest for us to look at. So the way that I'd like to do this generative conversation is I'm gonna pass the talking stick to Shannon, and if she would like to share, and then we'll just send it around the table and have an open discussion if anybody would like to add to what Shannon says or ask questions. So I'm gonna pass this to you, Shannon. Thank you.
Yeah, we're coming up against the deadline, the end of this month, to essentially pass any motions that we want in relation to motions that we want to bring forth to the Provincial School Trustees Association. That would have to be done basically at our next board meeting. The last time we talked about advocacy as a group was in September of last year, a month before the provincial election, thinking about letters to prospective candidates. And at that time, we did have a discussion. A number of people put up their hands. The issues that I noted at that time were around inflationary pressures, not ending up resulting in budget increases, concerns around new builds in the district, concerns around capital planning, a desire to see the Feeding Futures funding continue, which we have seen, which is great. More action around gender-based violence, and money to address the impact of climate change. For the ones that were listed in September, doesn't preclude anything new on the horizon. And we could do as many motions as we want. We can do one, we can do more than one.
Would anybody like to, Trustee, would you like to comment, or will I let you go first?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I was at the meeting when we came up with those topics, and obviously a few of those issues, as far as I understand, are like being funded, or as far as some of the projects go, they're moving forward, and that's exciting news. I am aware that you're working on a motion for gender-based violence, and that's obviously something I'm passionate about as I sit on the Gender-Based Violence Committee. And so I think that would kind of be where my mind was at. And yeah, I look forward to hearing about any kind of work you have going on there. I think, what might be valuable for us as a board as we move forward, when we get the team back together in our healthiest ways that we are. I know that some of us aren't feeling well, my family included, to kind of revisit some of these topics and be a little bit more prepared next year. Have set aside some time, like in our board working plan, to attack some of these issues and kind of discuss in this circle style. Again, I really appreciate having the time today to be able to kind of do this, but I always feel a little bit incomplete without the rest of my team. So I think because I'm connected to that, and I know you're sort of working on emotion, of course I'm feeling supportive of that at this time. But appreciate the other topics and would look forward to revisiting all of those and maybe a few more that I had up my sleeve. So thanks.
Yeah, Christine, okay, I would like to speak. Thank you, SJ, and thank you so much, Shannon. I feel really strongly about a few of those motions there, and would like more time to talk about it, particularly around I know our district has had a lot of support for our facilities in terms of Cumberland and Valley View, and other districts, Surrey being a big example, have a lot more need than we do. But something like operational funding and spending, inflation, etc. So each year costs go up exponentially, and yet the operational funding doesn't. And so there's always a scraping of letting go of this in order to fund this. And it really comes off the backs of students because we're funded by little butts in seats. And so that's a really large concern for me. But in order to write up a motion in that topic area, I would like to have a lot more explicit details and information, and cost analysis and percentages have increased over the past 4 years, for example. So it would require something a lot larger than us having a conversation. But I really feel that would be something that every board in the province is facing, and it isn't being addressed, especially with a new government. Kind of not like we've shifted, but there is a new complexity to our government, and I think it's more important now than ever that we begin looking at this, especially the fact that the accessibility legislation came without funding. Hello, again, that's just another area, whereas there's many different, whether it be the School Act, amendments, additions, or curriculum, suggested updates, etc. There's never any funding that's attached to it. I don't say never, but there usually isn't a funding component. There are sometimes for really dire situations there is, but so that's important. But I feel like I would like to meet with perhaps my superintendent and secretary treasurer to talk a little bit more deeply about that and put something together that was detailed, concise, and had a little bit of a punch behind it. That's all that I wanted to say. I'm going to pass to Shannon, and then Shannon, after you speak, we'll just pass the stick and we'll go around the table if anybody would like to speak.
Okay, yeah, great. Just a couple of additions. One is that we really did try and bring this, it now is in our board working plan to bring it to our December meeting, and we did try, but much like today, we just don't have a full, all of us, and but we weren't just missing you. If we were just missing you, we might have been able to have a fuller conversation. So, but it's one of those just poor time of year, like right before winter break and as people are getting sick, and then suddenly we're back from winter break and having to make decisions, and it's unfortunate that this conversation didn't come together a little earlier, but it's what it is. And then I guess one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of like planning for motions, one of the requirements from the motions committee is that it's not something that's been done before, and so some of the funding ones, my sense is, you know, they've been brought forward before, but you know, there's such a big systemic problem that they don't get addressed, and because it would be too much for the entire system to get funded that amount, and so that would be, I mean, maybe we need a checklist of what it looks like to plan advocacy. What has the BCA, like what motions have been passed before? You know, sometimes I see the follow-up correspondence from the BCSTA saying, hey, oh yeah, we've written this letter and now we're done. So, you know, there's that kind of element to it as well.
There's a website, right? So I can just check on their website and see the last year's motions and see what's in there.
Okay. And then I'm also thinking back to Michelle did a submission to the Select Standing Committee not this past year because it was suspended because of the election, but the previous year. And she brought 3 funding concerns, one of which I think might have been around inflation.
Yes, it was.
In which case, I feel like, I mean, you're only allowed 200 characters or words to like make this supporting statement. So, like, she was allowed to talk for I think 5 minutes. That would not be difficult to go back to and cut and paste into a motion if one hadn't been done before. But there's no point doing the work and submitting it, then having BCSTA say, sorry, you know, we've already got this one from 4 years ago and it's still just sitting there.
Or even last year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting. And then one other one that I brought up with Michelle last year that I'd forgotten about until now. But I remember Finesse, the regional meeting that we went to, and I know you went to the provincial one thereafter. Is it Joanne Jeffries? Talked, Deborah Jeffries, amazing speaker. She has so many ideas that were presented as things that need to move forward, but one that seemed really bite-sizable, like easy to express, both in terms of what the question is and what the supporting rationale was about desegregating the data in relation to children in care. Like all of the surveys that we get from the province, just doesn't. And I recall that in the past you've said that there's certainly some overlap with an Indigenous population in the district, but is that something that would be worth pursuing? And I raise it in part because it was Deborah Jeffries who said it, and she carries a lot of weight. She's done a lot of work in the field. And then one last comment is I haven't actually written anything. This is just an idea that has been ruminating, and I've been trying to find a place to have a conversation about whether people want me to do that or not, because I don't want to push the board to do something it doesn't want to do.
Hit it, girl, what is it?
Yeah,
tell.
Well, just as to seek an action plan to combat sexism and misogyny in the same way that the province has brought an action plan to address racism and to address anti-SOGI sentiment, and it's just expanding that scope of how we're dealing with discrimination in our society and student safety. And I think, for me that's pretty easy to put together because I so often put things together, but I think, referencing the anti-racism action plan, referencing the McCreary report, that doesn't take a lot for me to research in the same way that if I were looking for an argument about inflationary pressures, I would stumble around a bit, at least initially.
Thank you so much. Well, I support that, definitely. Jeremy, can I just ask you, I know we're having the stick, and I know you have it now, that's why I wanted to stop you, because I wanted you to speak to that. I have a question for you, that you might be able to answer. Back, when I was working in this field, I did get data on children in care, and in fact, I had to report out on it. It's all confidential in terms of it wasn't put up anywhere. But I knew exactly how many Indigenous students were in care and who held their case file and who the worker was. And I did generate data on this. So, and that was 2000, I guess, 15, 16, 17, 18, like up until I left in 2020. So did something change, or was I given data that a director took and gave to me on the shy?
Yeah, it's
Like, I wondered what happened.
It's a really good question. What happens typically is when we are working with the ministry on SharePoint data, when they provide that analysis, often our children, youth in care are masked because of the numbers of students that are in care. So, but what I can assure the board, we actually have a list, I have it in my office, of every single student who's in care. So we can actually, although we wouldn't in a public meeting necessarily present, we could talk about trends, but we do have that specific information about children and youth that are in care by name. Where we do struggle just is that there are sometimes a lag between intergovernmental sharing, and so sometimes we have to self-discover rather than it necessarily being given to us by Ministry of Children and Youth.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify on
Yeah, I would just add on the topic of advocacy, just grateful for the board's work. We are a system that has lots of needs, and I think advocacy is an important component of the board's work, and I'm just grateful that you are engaging in that.
I just got a note.
It's okay.
Are you good? Are you good? Okay.
You can hand it back.
No, that's great. That's,
Okay.
Carry on.
it's exciting that you guys are joining us in circles.
Oh, we feel so welcome and appreciated. It's lovely, right?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that first.
You'll see it better. Glad you referenced the board's advocacy, because it's one of the things that makes us really proud as CPAC. When BC CPAC hasn't done large groups in quite a while, but when we did go as reps to, I think, the DPAC Summit, was it? The positive vibes towards our district and what had been done what had been done with the work on gender-based violence was like, there were a lot of women that came up with like tears in their eyes, and I'm sure men would have as well. Just always wanting us to pass along thank yous for this. But what I sometimes worry about is that, much like when sometimes you think, oh, that one person will do that one thing, or that one group will do that one thing, so we don't have to do it. We don't need to keep saying that we need it. That I think it's important to know that we often find at DPAC that when we go to a meeting or we sit around a table, we know that there are like 30 parents behind us that are going please say this, please push for this, but they can't be there for whatever reason. So we just want to continually reiterate that there are constantly people quietly standing behind, hoping and supporting gender-based violence initiatives in whatever way they possibly can. Sometimes it's like quietly walking up and saying thank you so much I can't talk about it, thank you so much for what you're doing, and other times it's loudly with lots of letters and petitions. And the BCCPAC provincial level committee is not running right now because BCCPAC is going through some restructuring. But if they were, it would be a joint
Initiative.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is a very pleasant evening. I've loved the structure of this. This felt very warm and inviting and welcoming, and it was great. Probably one of my favorites. No offense to anybody else before. what you said really sparked something with me about when you guys talked about your, at the trustee association, bringing forth motions or whatever. And BCCPAC has a great option on their, under resolutions, like they have a list of archives, you can tell when the year, when the year, like it was posed and if it's archived or active. And I'm looking at the BC trustee association, they don't have that, but that's kind of almost what you need, is this sort of structure to be able to look to see what's been, if they're limiting you to what is, you know, so that would be that would be a great reference for them to see this and be like, hey, can we do this as trustees? Can we do what BC CPAC is doing with resolutions? Because it seems like the structures are very similar.
And it avoids repetition, because sometimes people be like, somebody should do something about, and it's like,
Oh yeah, we
someone
did
has.
this. And
It's in
so,
progress.
yeah. Anyway, so just to help.
Thank you.
Thanks. I spoke a little bit already, but I think, yeah, I'm glad that you guys are here tonight and being able to hear your thoughts and ideas and questions in such a communal way is exciting. And yeah, I think in this particular subject matter, I think, you know, how passionate I am about student safety, and I loved that, you know, even in our accessibility conversations, we're talking about that feeling of everyone, you know, sense of belonging. I was at a PAC meeting the other night talking about something that had completely, like it was completely about something else, and at the end of the meeting, we were all talking about, you know, just kids, you know, the goal of them being 18 or 17 and ready to leave us, and just feeling like they belong here, they're a part of this community, they feel safe, they have self-worth, they are important and are loved by this system, and yeah, anything we can do to further that goal, you know, I'm 100% in with all my hands and feet, so.
Yeah, full support. Can't speak much to it at this point, but definitely in support. And one of the things I feel like I also have to speak to is the fact that we don't have a climate action plan, and that we need funding to complete that work, I believe. That is one of the messages that I heard from our students, and I feel that, you know, we throw around, you know, mental health and concerns, and I feel that helping our students have some sort of vision and know that if we have a natural disaster, that they know that their schools and that our district, you know, has, you know, everything in place to cope and deal with emergencies, because while we've been very lucky as of now, we don't know what the future is holding, and with our weather the way it's been, it concerns me. We haven't had to face the wildfires for a bit, but that doesn't mean that they're not coming this summer. And so I believe that could be something that could be valuable for us to do some advocacy work on. I know that we all have so much on our plates, and we've been working on trying to progress so much, and it's one of those unspoken things that, you know, a climate action plan, it's not really, you know, those things that are necessarily out in the forefront, but I believe it's our due diligence to make sure that we are ready. And that again, we can't take funding from our students to complete that work, and I believe that it should be the responsibility of our provincial government to help aid us and direct us in that work. So that's something that, again, with more of our team here, I think it would be beneficial to converse about, and yeah, see what everybody else's thoughts are on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
Thanks, everyone.
Just to ask, can I ask Christy, whether you're talking about like funding to address climate change in terms of like new builds or retrofits, or more in relation to emergency preparedness, or both? Like
Definitely coming up with a climate action plan to begin with. for me is, we need that climate action plan in place so that when we have issues, when things come up, that we are, that, in turn, we have the emergency preparedness will be a part of the climate action plan. And again, and showing our students so that they're aware of the path that we're taking and what we are doing. What can we do, and maybe, figuring out some sort of, whether it's metrics or something to be able to share with our students and our community to show what actions we're taking and, in all aspects, because it is a stressor for students. And showing them that not only do we have the power to make a difference, but we ask them to. So yeah, I think in both ways, but definitely getting some of that financial support so we don't have to take any funding from any other areas would be beneficial.
I agree, Christy, thank you. Okay, we're going to policy, but attached is the ad hoc policy committee meeting report, and I've read through it, and I'm really thankful and supportive of the incredible, amazing hard work being done, and thank you for the policy one timeline and action plan, that was great. And I see the policy 4, trustee code of conduct, is what's being working on next, and then policy 17 and 24. The next ad hoc policy committee meeting is Wednesday, February 5th. Thank you so much to the committee. We have no updates in operations, finance, or other, and the only thing left is to adjourn.
Do we need to, we don't need to motion that we receive that report as information, do we? Okay,
I
sorry.
didn't think so, because
Great.
it says COP.
Yeah, no worries, thanks.
I'd like to move that the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you very much, everybody.